there, I'm Raymond Goh and welcome to Viewpoint live from Studio 7. Indeed, time really does fly in the blink of an eye. Just 2 days left until Malaysians decide on who to vote for. And in the previous episodes, we've also had discussions and touched a lot on issues related to the 14th general election and specifically discussed about the youth last night. Now, tonight we'll be addressing issues that occur in the Chinese communities and what these voters want from the next government. To discuss further on the topic, we have in our studios Ng Yin Sin, CEO of CREATE, that's Centre for Research, Advisory and Technology. Welcome once again. Good to have you.
Thank you very much for having me, Raymond.
Now, before we start our discussion tonight, let's take a look at this.
That the Chinese are very hardworking and entrepreneurial. That is recognized. But even as hardworking as you are, as entrepreneurial as you are, you require a government that will open the door for you.
Masyarakat Cina nak lebih lagi, tolong sokong lebih barisan nasional.
Apa lagi orang Cina mau?
Now, to set the backdrop for our discussion this evening, we'd like to start by setting the landscape first. Now, in the 2008 general election, or GE12, we saw a swing in the Chinese votes to the opposition, which was dubbed famously the Chinese tsunami. And after 2008, the government, which was led by BN, had implemented various initiatives for the Chinese community, including higher allocation for Chinese schools, business-friendly policies, and many, many other initiatives. Now, our question to our guest for tonight, the first question is, after 10 years from GE12, how do you see the Chinese support going to the BN-led government or the opposition pact?
Well, I think this is a rather tough question if I were to give you a one-line answer. Simply because if you speak to the urban professional Chinese, I think they are still a very much a solid bloc for the opposition parties. However, if you speak to the rural Chinese or the semi-rural Chinese, then they do appreciate what the BN government have done for them, especially when MCA and Gerakan, having lost so badly in year 2008 election and the 2013 election, these two Chinese majority or Chinese-based parties under the BN banner continue to work very hard to serve the people, especially those in the rural and semi-rural area. Then that leads us to the next statement whereby people will ask, so why the urban people or why the urban Chinese majority?
You took the
Chinese?
question right out of my mouth.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So why the urban Chinese are still so angry and distrust the government? I think simply because as urbanization sets in, as people are more learned, more educated and more informed especially, people tend to have a lot of expectation. And therefore, if you look around the world, most of the time, the urban people, especially in big cities, they are more pro-opposition and in a way they are anti-establishment.
Are they more pro-opposition rather than just plain anti-establishment?
I think...
Is there a real difference there?
Yes, there is fundamental differences. Anti-establishment would mean that whoever is the government, I will go the opposite way, simply because some people believe in a check and balance system. Okay. Many among us have been talking about wanting to have a two-party system in Malaysia, and therefore many have also said that Barisan Nasional have governed this country for more than 60 years. It's time to change. However, interestingly, what we are seeing within the Pakatan Pact today, which is the opposition, is now led by the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, who have been our Prime Minister for 22 2 years, the Prime Minister that I grew up with. So today, if we want to really talk about a two-party system in Malaysia, I am not exactly sure whether our urbanites, our urban Chinese supporters especially, are they really pro-opposition or they are simply anti-establishment in that sense?
I would love to get your take on the former Prime Minister who is now with the Opposition Pact, and with him working together with DAP. I'd like to get from you later on. But in the meantime, in your opinion, what are the issues that are important to the Chinese? And over the years, how has, in your viewpoint, the BN-led government responded to these issues? Because some of the issues are already evident, but others, the people, the Chinese community, have had to draw the attention of the government to it. So what's your response to this one?
Well, I think in my humble opinion, the two top matters which are very close to the heart of the Chinese would be one, education, two, economy. You see, many young Chinese entrepreneurs, or even the working class today, feel that life is very tough, especially those who live in KL, Penang, and maybe Johor. And many of such young Chinese entrepreneurs, I'm talking about those maybe below the age of 45 especially, may also have parents who have been small business owners for their entire life. So these young entrepreneurs or young Chinese entrepreneurs or even young Chinese professionals today who have been through hardship, looking at their parents, how the parents been through hardship, and they made it somehow with their bare hands. So Malaysia, for whatever said, we have given Chinese and all the rakyat in Malaysia a very conducive environment to live and to prosper economically, but not exactly very helpful in terms of policy-wise for small Chinese business owners in the past, maybe in the year pre-2000 or 2003.
So what you're saying is there are policies being implemented, but they do not necessarily benefit the previous generation who run small businesses.
Yes, exactly.
But that's just a change of times.
Let me give you an example. So most of the time in the past, it was always the big tycoons who qualify to win big contracts.
Right.
It is always the tycoons and the big businesses who get preferential treatment, for example, tax rebates or goodies from the government because they are big enough when it comes to big deals. So it is always very natural for us to see that the small business owners on the ground had to fend for themselves. So they made it with their bare hands, like what I said earlier. And it was exactly because life was very tough for their parents, and now them, these professional people, they feel that the government policies have never taken care of them. And this is the Chinese psyche of why so many people are so angry. And of course, when they read from the newspaper and national news, all they see is that successes...
The big boys.
Yes, the big boys. So successes have been drummed up, but they don't feel it themselves. They don't feel it on the ground.
They feel that the majority of the big chunk of the successes are by the big boys.
Are the big boys, or the goodies will go and help the poorest of the poor. So the M40... which is always the urbanites, the professionals, the educated...
The middle income group.
It's like the middle child syndrome in the family. So that is actually the psyche of why Chinese are mostly very unhappy. And all this put together, accumulated over the years, has also contributed to the distrust that they have towards the government. So when they see something, but they cannot feel it, they don't own anything of it, and they don't enjoy it, and this would only mean that all these policies has been designed to favor a particular group of people, a particular group of race, or even cronies, and to allow corruption to take place.
But okay, let's get back to this the M40. If they see that it's the big boys who are benefiting from all these policies, wouldn't this encourage them to
be big as well?
Yes, to pursue their dreams, make themselves big, and be part of this policy that would benefit the big boys as well? I mean, we've seen many successful Chinese companies coming along this way. People you've never heard of before have suddenly become very big.
Yeah, I think times have changed, whereby in the past, if you own a brick and mortar business, you may need a certain skills and products or services to grow big. But today, situation have changed. But let me go back to the Malaysian economy and the contribution of SME.
Right.
So you see today, SME Malaysia is evolving into a developed nation. And as we see in most developed nations, whereby the SMEs actually contribute So the SMEs today in Malaysia contribute to approximately 38.6%, close to 39% of the country's GDP. However, if you look at most of the developed nations around the world, SMEs most of the time will contribute to more than 50% of their national or to their country's GDP. And whether you like it or not, whether you like to admit it or not, in Malaysia, most of the SMI and SMEs are actually small businesses owned by Chinese people. So when many of the Chinese SMEs feel the pinch that they are not part of the government procurement supply chain process, for example, these have somehow forced many Chinese organizations to innovate, to transform, or even sometimes to branch out from Malaysia. And also for today, if you look at many young Chinese entrepreneurs, but of course we also have to thank internet connectivity, we also have to thank globalization and all the transformational policies. Many Chinese SMEs today, especially those who are run by the youth especially, have somehow managed to leapfrog to the global stage. Let me give you an example. For example, when they go towards the global market by digitizing their products, by having a stage in the global market, they actually move away from the cocoon of being an SMI or SME, which is known by Malaysia Incorporated. However, today the sky is the limit because of internet connectivity.
The borderless world.
The world is their stage, you see.
Right.
So therefore, it is somehow the transformational policies put in by Prime Minister Najib actually give very favorable condition to people who want to work hard.
All right, we'll just have to hold it on that for a moment. We have to go for a short break, I'm afraid, Yin Sin. We'll be right back in a short while. Make sure you stay with us right here on Viewpoint. Thank you for staying with us right here on Viewpoint at NTV Studio. We're live to you, and in our studios is our eminent guest. It's Yin Sin, CEO of Create. Thank you so much for being with us again.
Thank you for having me.
Now, here's a question that may have come across many people's minds. Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, having joined the opposition, what would you say by joining the opposition? How has this affected Chinese support for DAP?
I think the entire exercise of Tun Mahathir joining Pakatan or DAP, keeping their rocket away and using the Pakatan logo, I think this could be a zero-sum game, in all honesty. Simply because I believe that there will be a lot of hardcore DAP supporters who have been with them for the last 30-odd years, just simply cannot forget what Tun Mahathir had done during his 22 years of tenureship as the PM. And there will also be hardcore DAP supporters who will leave DAP or who have left DAP because they couldn't agree with the current political equation within Pakatan, hence they choose to abstain in this election. Or there are also incidences, I believe, whereby party leaders of DAP warned them that Tun Dr. Mahathir will not change his style of leadership. Yet the current DAP leader continue with what they believe will win them Malay votes.
What about your opinion? Do you think Tun Dr. Mahathir will change?
I don't think so.
He seems very convincing to many people.
Of course, very convincing. We really do have to give it to Tun Dr. Mahathir. I would say that he is one of the most savvy politicians that we have ever seen in history, not only in Malaysian history, but I would say in the world stage. He is one of the most savvy
and possibly the most experienced,
most
having been the
and
premier for 22 years.
That's how he could actually hijack Pakatan. Instead of Pakatan being led by Anwar, now Tun Dr. Mahathir is the one leading Pakatan, and I thought that's an irony, and it's actually a miracle that Kit Siang, who have been fighting his life with Tun Mahathir today, are singing the same song. I really do not know whether principles more important or political ambition is actually will take precedent over many things when it comes to politics. But coming back to the question, I feel that Tun M's inclusion has also attracted some Malay support for DAP. especially those Malay support ground who were his die-hard supporter when he was the Prime Minister. So that's one. So I also feel that there will also be hardcore opposition supporters who will oppose to everything, and they do not care who DAP embraces. So they will oppose the government for whatever it is. So whatever DAP does is not important, because all they are for is to be anti-establishment. So that's one thing.
Yinsin, that's a very interesting observation, because I'm sure many of the members of the public, including the Chinese community, have realized that with the inclusion of Dr. M in the opposition pact, it has actually drawn some attention from the Malay voters. How many percent, we don't know.
Yeah.
All right? But then, isn't this DAP's original plan? And if that is so, it seems to be working. Why is it a zero sum for DAP?
Well, I have not finished my
Okay,
equation.
please do.
Because when I said that when we have hardcore opposition supporters who are opposed to anything that the BN would do, they don't care who DAP embraces. And therefore, we could see over the development of political history in Malaysia, we have seen DAP together with Gagasan Rakyat, then Bersih, then Barisan Alternatif, then Pakatan Rakyat, now Pakatan Harapan. Not to forget, they were a part of Semangat 46. They were also together with PAS 2 times, maybe. So this is what DAP is. However, most Chinese cannot remember what happened in the 1980s and 1990s, and especially the younger one, somehow, who most of them would not have read or even understood political history in Malaysia. They won't understand how the entire exercise have come about to become and how we got to where we are today.
But how would these group of people take to Tun Dr. Mahathir being in the opposition coalition?
You see, one thing which I find quite hilarious is that over the last 30-odd years, DAP, led by Kit Siang, have always demonized Tun Dr. Mahathir when Mahathir was with UMNO leading Barisan Nasional as Prime Minister. Overnight, when Mahathir joined opposition, everything has been whitewashed. Kit Siang have cleaned Mahathir with Fat Baru. We always say like a detergent. So Mahathir become a saint. So I would also like to ask DAP supporters or maybe Pakatan sympathizers out there, assuming that one day Najib joined DAP, will Najib also become a saint overnight? That is actually a question that I would like to ask many people. So where do we draw the line?
Okay,
where would be the principles are?
In a short term, it would seem that it doesn't really go well with the Chinese supporters, with Tun Dr. M. in the
depending on who you're
coalition.
talking, depending on whether they are hardcore DAP or they are hardcore opposition.
Which is the larger group?
I think the older members who have been with DAP through all the up and downs, I think it would be very hard for them, because can you imagine your party flag logo being kept away and not being able, and DAP candidates are now not able to stand proudly in the election with their own party flag? It's something very difficult for me to even understand.
So I would imagine that there may be quite a larger group of the hardcore versus those who are willing to take it in.
Yes.
All right. Now, still talking about, these are of course Chinese supporters. Still talking about Chinese supporters, you mentioned something about caretaker Prime Minister Najib, and a lot has been said that he has really done plenty for the Chinese community. What's your viewpoint on this?
Well, on one hand, I feel that this is good news for the Chinese, because Prime Minister Najib, caretaker Prime Minister Najib, actually took care of the Chinese community a lot. But on the other hand, I have this conflicting view in my own head, that I feel very strongly about a leader who can be inclusive in his approaches to govern the country. I believe that it is very important to note that the overall conditioning in Malaysian public policy making should not specifically for any single race, but it has to be for everyone.
Are you saying that caretaker Prime Minister Najib has done that, being very inclusive?
I think he has been very inclusive. Yes, it is true, factually true, that that Najib has done the most for the Chinese out of all the prime ministers that we ever had in Malaysia. However, I also said that it is very important for a leader to be inclusive in his approaches. I feel that this is so important because Malaysia for whatever you are saying or you don't want to recognize, is that we are a multiracial nation. We need to have very inclusive, very sustainable approaches in whatever that we do, so that we can prosper together, we can move on together as a nation, instead of one race or one particular community can fly really high and the other community will be left out. And when we have very huge income disparity or social disparity in a society, of course we will see social cohesion being affected, we will see racial remarks being to come into play, because people feel that there's double standards. People will feel that the government is not treating them very fairly and all that. So another perspective, another initiative that I thought I would like to remind the young people in Malaysia, especially young people, is that over the last couple of years, especially under the economic transformation program and the government transformation program, is that we saw so many agencies that Najib has started. For example, the one closest to the heart of the young, especially the younger lot of entrepreneurs, would be NBOS Initiative, the Magic Initiative, MDEC, Might, My Creative, and so many more. There are like...
And the TN50
And the
as well.
TN50 as well. So all these are initiatives started by the government, which has very direct impact across the board, because they are not exactly ministry driven, and therefore most of them report directly to the Prime Minister because they are very mission driven. For example, MDEC is very much digital transformation. Magic is very social entrepreneurship, youth entrepreneurship driven. And of course, we also have to remember the GEM, the Global Entrepreneurship Movement, done under the MOF, which is a very good platform for all young entrepreneurs to come together. And surprisingly, this platform is actually run by a Chinese CEO.
All right. And
So,
these initiatives would actually breach that gap that we were talking about, the
earlier.
M40 earlier.
Yes.
All right.
So,
we have to go for a short break now,
Okay.
Yin Sin. We'll be back, of course. Stay with us right here on Viewpoint. There's so much more to talk about, and today we're talking about the Chinese community. Welcome back. Now, the MCA and even the Prime Minister have stressed that the importance of Chinese representation in the government. Dr. Sri Najib has been mentioning this, especially in the past week or so that the Chinese do not lose their voice in the cabinet. In the last cabinet, there were only 4 Chinese ministers because the Chinese BN candidates didn't do that well in the last general election. The Prime Minister said that he wants a strong Chinese representation in BN because he wants to take this country to greater heights. Yin Sin, what's your viewpoint on this one?
you see, interestingly, the Malaysian Chinese want the Prime Minister to work for them first before they vote for BN. And most of the Chinese kept asking, what have BN done for us? Because the vote bank in 2008 and 2013 have shown very clearly that there was a split right down in the middle based on popular votes. So BN would have no choice but to take care of their own support base first. And most of them, coincidentally, reside in the rural areas, and they are mostly Malays. So just like any political party, we take care of our own support base first. Any political party would say this to you.
Would do that, yes, of course.
And we all know that politics is a numbers game, right? So it is also understandable that BN or UMNO will then have to take care of their own supporters first, because if BN or UMNO plow their resources into meeting the demands of those who demand for it but didn't vote for them, I believe that eventually their own supporters will get upset and also abandon them. So therefore, I really cannot understand why Malaysian Chinese must go out en bloc to vote for opposition and abandon the BN ship. I feel that some of the Chinese at least should also lend some support to the BN component parties, especially because whatever you say, I think as of today, BN is more likely to win. So when BN wins, And I think when this happened, BN would have lost all the Chinese seats, especially those in the urban and even the rural. That would mean that we will definitely have a Malay government. We are going to have an UMNO government. So when all the Chinese MPs from opposition, although they will still be in parliament, but they are not part of the public policy decision-making process in ministries I'm talking about. So the Malaysian Chinese will be at the losing end if we vote en bloc for the opposition, because we will then have absolutely no say in policy development, and I believe that this move will worsen the fate of the Chinese community in the country. If I may take a bit of time to talk a little bit about the BN Charter and the Constitution.
We don't have much time, Yin Sin.
Okay.
Yes.
Actually, the BN Charter lays down very clearly that coalition parties, through their nominated members at the BN Supreme Council, are mandated to consult and to seek consensus. Consensus is the most important word in the entire
among
BN.
The coalition partners.
Among the coalition parties within the BN equation.
Right.
And because of this fundamental importance, when Chinese component parties like MCA and Gerakan, when they do not get any Chinese support in the upcoming election, they are going to be defunct like beggars, excuse my language, in this BN coalition, and they are not going to be part of this public policy making progress.
So what you're saying is we actually need to see the Chinese community have more ministers or hold positions in cabinet and in the government to have a bigger and stronger voice.
Definitely.
And this 50% split between the Chinese voters for opposition and for BN is not doing the Chinese community any good.
Not doing us any good. It's like two elephants fighting. The Chinese is going to be at the ends for in this country. There are only 26% of Chinese community in Malaysia. So two elephant fighting, the end will die. Will be the sacrificial land.
So let's say right now we've got 4 ministers in the cabinet. In the cabinet, how many would be sufficient to make it sufficient for the Chinese voice to be heard?
I think easily 8 will be quite nice. 8 to 10. Of course, 10 is an ambitious figure, I think, today, but 8 would be lovely.
All right, that's I'm afraid that's all the time we have.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yin Sin, for sharing your insights and your viewpoint with us this evening. We have been covering, of course, the topic on Chinese community and how their votes would go and what are the things that are important for the Chinese community leading up to GE14 and polling day, which is just 2 days to go on May 9th. That's a wrap for tonight's episode of Viewpoint. Do tune in tomorrow, same time, same place, for more topics of discussion in the run-up to GE14. In the meantime, for updates, visit myundi.com.my. I'm Raymond Goh. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.